So we now move on to the next session of the afternoon, which is going to be led by Cathy and Barrie. Now, in some ways, there's a little bit of a diversion because I don't think we want to. Well, I don't think Cathy wants to be talked to as a PhD student, do you, Cathy?
I wish I was as young as I was.
But I think this is important work that's going on within my home life, and Karen is a PhD student, about to finish. And although the work they're going to be talking about is not necessarily Karen's PhD, I just want to highlight that her thinking in relation to all of the work you've been doing, not just your PhD, it very much has informed all of this. So there's PhD thinking in there, and you are a PhD student, and Cathy Sharp, of course, is one of our researchers within My Home Life. So I'll hand over to both of you to introduce the next piece. Thank you.
I could do with one of those sheets with our abstract in it.
Oh, you're right.
It's on the, should be the far side, Cathy.
Oh, got it, thank you. Yeah. There's so many bits of paper around. Okay, so Karen and I are going to try and have a bit of a dialogue about a piece of work, a strand of work, I guess, that is very much kind of ongoing. It's not necessarily ongoing in the specific setting that we're going to talk about, but it's ongoing across the kind of My Home Life world, we've entitled it Ordinary Magic, Bringing Personal Outcomes to Life, because we wanted to link very much with some of the themes of the day, particularly the themes of this morning, I think, in terms of the practices and the kind of all that kind of embodiedness that was there this morning. So we've not yet written about this. We will be at some point. So really, we'll just try to kind of like have a bit of a conversation and hopefully bring you into that throughout. We're talking about what we call the personal outcomes work, and we're going to actually talk about the work that we've done with the Erskine Care Home. So I'm sure many of you will know of Erskine. So we're talking about doing some work to develop personal outcomes within, I suppose it's really 4 or 5 settings across that home environment. So Karen's going to say a little bit about some of the background personal outcomes.
It's a fairly, for somebody that's setting off to say we're going to talk about bringing personal outcomes to life, it's not the most inspiring slides to start off with, is it? Let's be honest. But personal outcomes are absolutely about life. I suppose a working definition would be personal outcomes involves understanding what matters to a unique and particular person in the context of his or her whole life, rather than exclusively through the filters of age, condition, services or care setting. And what we now understand as a personal outcomes approach that comprises these 3 equally important components of engaging to understand what matters and why it matters, and the extent to which that is being achieved for the person, who else is involved in their life, and how people can work with that person in order to support them to achieve them more often and organise the way we're doing, recording that information in a way that keeps the story going, and then using that information both to support the individual in their own care and support, but also to use that information to inform more collective decision making. And just to give you a sense of the history, there has been a sort of growing focus on personal outcomes for 20 years now, and 10 years of research that was carried out initially by the University of York, their Social Policy and Research Unit, looking at the outcomes that matter to older people living in communities. That was followed up by some work with the University of Glasgow that actually looked at the outcomes in the context of partnership working across health and social care, and expanded it beyond older people to look more at mental health services and also adults with learning difficulties, but still within the community. And at the end of that programme in 2007 is when I first became involved in this work. And from there on, there's been this rolling programme of knowledge exchange and action research to try and embed a focus on personal outcomes in quite diverse practice settings. At the same time, from about 2010, we've had this growing emphasis on personal outcomes and policy in Scotland. Some of that now enshrined in legislation. It's there at the heart of the Self-Directed Support Act and also the Carers Scotland Act. And most recently has emerged as one of the twin pillars in the National Care Standards, which have just been out for review and responding to the consultation. And I think that's a really important development, the way the care standards are shaped, personal outcomes and human rights as twin pillars, very much working hand in hand. Most recently I was involved, I think some of you have maybe picked up some of the leaflets that were out on the tables earlier, in an ESRC funded project called Meaningful and Measurable, which was really a chance just to take stock of all the work that's gone on in these different practice settings over the last years. And key messages coming out of that are very much about a focus on outcomes. It has to be practice-led. It's all about communication, all about relationships. In that time, there's been little pieces of work carried out in care home settings, but not an awful lot. And actually quite limited as well, because in most cases, in understanding the outcomes that mattered, the engagement was confined to those older people who were able to take part in outcomes-focused conversations as more traditionally understood. So really, this was kind of setting the scene for now being involved in my home life, real alignment between what we know are the principles of a personal outcomes approach and my home life, to try and take that forward in a more inclusive way, looking at everybody living in care homes, not just those who are able to tell us what matters to them, and to actually begin to explore not just the challenges, which has been the focus up until now, but also the opportunities of implementing a focus on personal outcomes in a care home setting by just trying things out in practice. So that's where I think Cathy around the My Home Life approach.
I think it's really important that you understand that this is in the context of the leadership support programme, the My Home Life programme, with managers. And myself and Dorothy Armstrong, who unfortunately can't be here today, were the facilitators of two cohorts of, we tend to use the term shorthand managers, but actually all sorts of people were involved. I'll come to that. So Dorothy and I facilitated the leadership support programme across Erskine, and in that group were certainly individual home managers, so the care home manager, they're for the overall individual home managers, deputies, senior carers, activities people were in that. So kind of quite a mix of staff were in the My Home Life programme, and then we started to focus on personal outcomes as a sort of strand of work that kind of came towards the end of that programme. And we were always experimenting in My Home Life. This is probably obvious from what you've heard today already. So we'd already done a lot of work in Erskine, and as somebody who's facilitated now a number of cohorts, and they're all a little bit different in terms of their makeup and so on, and the things that they kind of take forward. We have very similar outcomes, but somehow the nature of each cohort is a little different. And I think what stands out for me about Erskine was the fact that in the leadership support programme we had some AHPs. And I think it was particularly the AHPs, but not solely them, who really ran with the language work that we do. In fact, we've got a language poster up on the wall here today, which is very helpful, away with words. And we really encourage them to be quite kind of curious and playful about language, and to notice lovely language, to notice the way people put things that they like. And so we encourage that. And then we say, well, actually sometimes some of the language you kind of think, oh, I'm not sure about that. And so we encourage a curiosity about what might we call this, or what words might we use. So we're not going in there kind of pointy finger, picking up people, for words that we don't like, but we're encouraging a kind of curiosity about it. And I suppose in that we're using one of the important principles or sayings of appreciative inquiry, that words create worlds. So the words that we use create the culture in which we operate, and it's a very useful and important lever for culture change. So for me that was a thing about what was particularly interesting about the Erskine cohort. It also meant that they were getting very good at spotting great things that were happening. There's loads of lovely things happening that they were perhaps taken for granted, difficult to see actually. So they were much more attuned in a lovely way. They were becoming appreciative inquirers. It's a term that we've introduced to today already. So they were getting quite used to that. So change is starting to happen as a result of my home life, and we very much give them the view that change is a collective endeavour. So it is about being appreciative. It's also about being collaborative. It's not a change that they can mandate. They have to kind of bring people with them. So that was quite important. I think it's probably worth saying something about the shape of the personal outcomes work before we move on. So if you imagine that the leadership support programme has ended, we kind of reconfigured things so that we worked with, it doesn't matter really what order we did them in, but we work in the different home settings with a group of people. So the manager from Earthman Park was joined by some of her senior care staff and some of the AHPs who had not all of those people had been on the leadership support programme. So we got some new faces. They're not steeped in what I've just been describing. It's new to them. And we did a sort of a rolling programme around different homes over several months. And we had 3 sessions in each site. The first session we would introduce some basic material, and we would create this idea really that it's a little bit like what Adele's just been saying, like we're not giving out things for people to do, we're asking them to go away and think about what they want to do and to create something that's meaningful for them. So it was very experiential. It was up to them what they wanted to do and how they went about it. Okay?
I suppose the key thing for me to take from that would be this idea of extending the work to include senior carers and care assistants as well. Absolutely critical to have them involved. This slide here gives kind of idea of some of the high level types of outcomes that sit within this framework of personal outcomes that was developed through the work I alluded to earlier. And I think the key thing around that is sometimes when people talk about outcomes or personal outcomes, they latch on to specific things. So they might think it's something that the activities people would have to be, of course meaningful activities important, but it's just one of many outcomes. And I think what this really communicates is a lot of these things about having a say and being supported to die well, being treated with respect, staying as well as can be. Actually, this idea that Adele was talking about, personal outcomes, it really is about the shared purpose, everybody working together and recognising that every interaction is critical in supporting that person's self-esteem, self-respect and personhood. But the limitations of this slide, of course, is like with much of this work, there's this assumption that people are going to be able to engage in a conversation. We see all around the room, we can get carried away with these speech bubbles. The conversation has been such a powerful motif for us, but yet the whole time that this personal outcomes work was going on, there's always this niggling concern. Are we actually at risk of creating a two-tier system whereby the people who are unable to tell us themselves what matters to them actually get left behind? And the key thing for me starting out in this work was I just had the opportunity to read Julie's thesis, which I have to say is a thing of beauty. It really is astonishingly, wonderfully crafted. And people talk about light bulb moments. This wasn't like a light bulb moment at all. It was more like a Christmas tree with like 100 little fairy lights going off. I could just see so much potential for actually engaging with the senior carers and the care staff to take these examples, observed from an appreciative stance, very sensitively and carefully observed and carefully worded, to take them back to them. And the crucial second part of that was when Julie talked about her methodology actually being by actually experiencing the people herself, engaging in that inter-embodied work. And this recognition of this is actually what these care staff do. This is our way to get into the inside story. Let's take some of these examples out and see how they respond to them. And I was quite excited about the possibilities, but for me it actually far exceeded my expectations. It was a real, it was like almost like a champagne cork or something, this real stimulus that people were saying, yeah, we do all this stuff all the time, and recognising examples. yeah, of course we do that, but they felt really valued. They did feel that the stuff they were doing was validated, that somebody had actually taken the time to notice it. So it gave them that confidence to actually come into these groups and share their expertise and think it was going to be listened to. And then that crucial next step to begin to act on it. So the example that Julie gave us this morning of the lady that liked to do the gay Gordons, I'm sharing that with staff and they're going, oh yeah, we've got a lady like that. She was a professional dancer and I do that with her, and actually that's great. And I've always thought, well, it maintains her mobility. But actually it's more than that. It's like recognising that she's still a person and involving her. And actually, I don't know if everybody knows that about her, which kind of thing brings us on to the next thing that you were saying, Julie, about how do you pass that on once you've tapped into that knowledge. And I think for me, that was where working alongside Cathy, who has that real passion for animation, and actually how do you take that thing forward was really, really helpful.
So this is a sort of a bit of a sort of standout moment for me, if we forgive the pun, you'll see why. So at the end of one of the earlier sessions, it was in Erskine Park, we had an amazing conversation about recording practices. So Karen's been talking about that lovely example of engagement, but what gets written down, you can bet that wouldn't be written down. Very likely it wouldn't get written down. Why does it matter that it's written down? What do we write down? We write things down, frankly, to cover our backs, yeah, or because we think we should. Or we write it down in a way which is kind of not actually very communicative in terms of what happened. So we might say showered. Somebody was showered today, but actually we didn't write down the amazing skill that we used in order to get somebody who doesn't like having a shower to have a shower without taking up a lot of time, because we discovered the knack. We discovered a thing, we know how to do it, but we don't necessarily write it down. So we had a really fascinating conversation about daily notes, and what would you write down and why would you write it down. So it's a really practical and great discussion to be part of. And we kind of came up with these questions as a way, this is really just a practice aid in many ways, but I shouldn't say just, because it was theirs. They designed this, and they came up with these questions that you might use with your colleagues. So we're now talking about a group who we've really just met, most of them, not all of them, but most of them we've just met, who are thinking about the colleagues who are not in the room, who have not been on My Home Life, who know nothing of this. What questions would help us think about what to write down? So what stood out today? Oh, it was great today. I managed to get Mr. Brown showered. Will that be useful tomorrow or in the future? Yeah, very probably. Really great to know that. Okay, so what next? How might it be useful? How do we use it? Who else needs to know? Should know or be involved? And they came up with those questions themselves. Another group would have come up with a slightly different set. It doesn't really matter. They were their questions. And I said, right, okay, how are you going to remember that? See if we can go find an image. And I think it was actually the day that we first got the new images. We've always used images. And very quickly they went to the table. They were going back to their shift. We were finishing. My job was to write it all up, and they came up with the umbrella. So that was for them a useful aid. And Karen has been into Erskine more recently than I have, and tells me that this is everywhere now. And I'm not too sure what I think about that.
Near the computer.
Near the computers. To remind people, it's just the image of the umbrella. What stood out today? Right, okay, I'm going to write it down. So we're trying to encourage that sharing. Our next session, I suppose, moving on from that. So that was probably session 1. The next session, we were encouraging them to look at recording and see, having this kind of thing, does it make a difference? Does it alter anything? Because obviously this is all about outcomes, so this is just part of the process. So we asked people to bring back for next time some examples of what things actually are written, and particularly with a focus on the things that they like, examples that they like about what's written down. So we got a lot of those back, and that was some really beautiful examples of the way that things could be written. And I think they were starting to notice more and to think about how that could change. But I suppose one of the, I don't know which, it was a different session, but we just want a little story that we thought we'd share with you about a different session where one of the carers, well, I think we're calling her Audrey, we're calling her Audrey, said that she would bring something along for the next time of a kind of system that she had for recording, and she arrived with 2 folders that she called Smarty folders, and I'm still sitting there thinking, why are they called Smarty folders? Oh, okay, they've got Smarties on the cover, that's why they're called Smarty folders. I thought it was an acronym for something. I was, completely confused. And the big folders, but Karen is on it. Karen is talking to her in more detail and asking her about the Smarty folders, so Karen can pick up the story.
Yeah, I think it was just, for me, there is that real recognition that, as well as residents and families, that care home staff do have these really, really important things to teach us. And I have to say, for this carer in particular, she had previously shared some lovely examples of interactions, knew there was some really sophisticated learning there. So when she came in with these big folders that were actually all about meal times and preferences, and said the thing that she was most proud of, which she reinstated her list, which had everybody's tea and coffee and what they took on the front of it. It was a bit of a kind of heart sink moment, really, and thinking, we're back to preferences. I thought we were going into people's lives here, but then actually sort of asking her, saying, okay, well, this is what you brought along, which is really important to you. Why do you think it's important? And she was able to say very clearly, people don't think this stuff matters, they think it's just a list. But actually it's really important, because we've got, quite often we have agency staff coming in, different residents. If I could say Bill, for example, he'll say to me, you know what, we know it's going to be a bad day if we don't even know what we're taking, our tea and coffee in the morning. She then went on to say, it's really important that you do know these things. If you think about it at home, I don't say to my husband, do you want a coffee or do you want tea? Of course we're all about supporting choices, but they've got to be real and meaningful choices. A lot of these things, some of the residents, we've known them for years and years. We know their things inside out, and there are some things where you want to try and introduce a bit of variety, but there are other things where you don't, and it's really important keeping the relationship going. And then, of course, we have some residents, the way in which their dementia presents is if you actually ask them a question first thing in the morning that they feel they should know the answer to, and they don't actually know whether they take sugar or not, they become agitated for the rest of the day, and it sets off this whole pattern of behaviour. So this list, for me, does contribute to personal outcomes, and Cathy and I are both humbled, absolutely, that whole kind of sobering and actually slightly shameful experience, and just giving people that space once again to articulate their expertise and to recognise, again, all these little things. Sometimes I think when people talk about personal outcomes in care homes, they've got people going out in speedboats and tea parties and everything, and these things are of course really, really important, but all that day-to-day stuff, all that ordinary magic, I think that the staff are doing day in, day out, really important, and really important that they are able to articulate that and support it, and actually, I suppose, defend what they do as well.
So I suppose for me it brought that sort of the affirmative nature of the priesthood inquiry, how important that is, and for this group of staff. I don't know what they thought they were coming to. I think we're about to start another group in South Ayrshire, and I was having some conversations yesterday, and I think they're kind of thinking that we're going to teach them skill about personal outcomes, and there's going to be a lot of content, or there'll be a toolkit or something. And of course we have some aids. We've got them. They're mostly up there on the wall over there. We have those, but really it's quite a light touch holdings framework. And I think from conversations I was having even yesterday that they were massively relieved to hear that actually what we were interested in is some of the things that we've been talking about today, some of that really skillful work that goes on. It's amazing that Julie mentioned the Gladys Wilson and Naomi's video, which many of you I know will know, but I only saw that yesterday for the first time, just by chance. So you can imagine I'm still going, wow. It's absolutely, and the manager that showed it said, lots of staff know how to do this. The lady there she's very impressive, but actually the staff are very impressive, but it's taken for granted, it's not noticed. So there's a lot of lovely things that the appreciative approach helps. And in our abstract, in the inside story, I suppose, is the amazing value of that everydayness. Yes, it's great to see somebody that's so skillful. It's on YouTube. It's been on YouTube for years, apparently. I mean, I don't know where I've been, but anyway, that noticing, that relating. But the thing I think that was lovely, that was cracking open how we might better notice and share with others. Yeah. I think some things get shared in interactions, and we've probably got some other stories about exchanges that happen in the tea room, whatever. That might happen, but it's kind of accidental, a bit accidental if it gets written down. So I think what the personal outcomes work has offered is this sort of heightened attentiveness to the lovely things that do go on and that are going on, and that can be notched up, yes, more of it, within care home settings. And it's just a beautiful example, really, of some very, very practical knowing and ways of knowing, if you like, and bringing that to life, as Karen said. I think we've got enough from us.